Hello and welcome to episode 3 of my series on vocal sound healing. And today we're going to be talking about vocal scanning. So, in other words, using the voice to diagnose somebody's energy field, to find out what's going on in their energy field, using your voice and your intuition. And I created this series because I get a lot of people getting in touch about the vocal sound healing courses that I run. And often people have a lot of questions about, exactly what's covered on the courses. So these episodes are to help hopefully give a greater understanding of what someone might learn on a course that I offer and the type of work that it actually is. So in the other episodes, 1 and 2, we've talked so far about what is vocal sound healing and the type of person that could do it. And we've talked about the importance of silence. That was episode 2 in sound healing. Even though we're dealing with sound, we have to balance with silence. So here in episode 3, vocal scanning is a really important aspect of vocal sound healing, because this is where we find out what's going on with a person after we've done an initial consultation and we hear, why a person might be coming for a session or what's going on with them. We then use our voice to scan their energy field and understand a little bit more of what might be going on the deeper levels of their being. And sometimes it's stuff that, we're not aware of consciously or on a mental level. So I've got some questions here that have been asked to me over the years that I've been teaching courses on vocal sound healing. It's coming up 10 years now. So I do get a lot of questions, but these are the most common ones. And the very first one is, what is vocal scanning in the context of vocal sound healing? And as I just said, it's about using your voice to understand a person's energy field on a deeper level. It's a real introduction or an introductory process to somebody's energy field. And when we work with vocal scanning, we need to understand pure vocal tone. And pure vocal tone is something that we work with anyway with vocal sound healing. But if you're not familiar with what pure vocal tone is, I'll demonstrate it now. It's taking a simple vocal sound like an ooh or an ah sound and just holding that. Ooh or ah. It could be as simple as a hum. So when we work with pure tone, we're not using any genre. There's no vibrato, there's no sense of I'm singing classical, opera, jazz. It's not about that. It's about taking the most simple sound that we have, a simple hum, a simple vowel sound, and just gently sounding that consistently. So this ooh, it's just a simple sound. And what works along with that simple sound, is that I am staying connected and centered with my own body. So I'm about to work with this sound in somebody's energy field, and I'm about to sense, using that sound and using my own intuition and my own body's signals, to find out what's going on a deeper level with them. So when I use my voice in somebody's energy field, their energy will affect my sound, and it will affect my sense of who I am in that moment. So if I'm scanning over somebody's energy field, ooh, and I come across an area perhaps of stagnation, I might hear in my sound a change in the brightness of the sound, the texture of the sound. It might suddenly feel really dull, the sound, or it might even break. I might even feel like I've got something in my throat, or there's like a sense of congestion in my throat, or in worst case scenario, the sound might actually break or crack. And in addition to that, when we're working with the sound, we have to be open to our own sense of where we might want to go with our voice. and our own intuition, where we might feel led when we're working with somebody's body. Now, if you're already an energy worker or a Reiki practitioner, for example, I think you'll understand that perhaps more than somebody that isn't. So when you're working with energy, there's a feeling of pull, there's a feeling of wanting to go somewhere to work on someone's body. And when we're scanning, what we're doing is we're taking note, firstly, of any sound fluctuations. A common one when we start working with vocal scanning is it feels a little bit like you're going over a cattle grid in the back of a car when you're sounding over somebody's body and there's energy disturbance. It's a bit sort of like a this sort of happens. This is quite a common one. But in addition to those changes in the sounds, we also need to be aware of where we feel that sense of pull, like I just said, and any changes in our own emotions, any changes in our temperature. There are lots of different ways that we might react to scanning over somebody's body, and this plays an important part in addition to the voice. So vocal scanning is just that, it's sensing into somebody's energy field to get a deeper understanding of what might be going on with them. So another question, and it sort of follows on from what I've just been saying there, is do I need to understand intuition? And I just said there that if you're already an energy worker, someone that's used to working, with healing energy, you'll probably have a better understanding of intuition than somebody that doesn't. But then having said that, we are all wired to be intuitive. We are all wired to have that deeper sense, that deeper knowing for our own lives and for working with other people. So when we start to work with the voice for healing, I would say, yes, we do need to either already have an understanding of intuition or be open to developing it. But the wonderful thing about working with the voice in vocal sound healing is that we actually start to develop our intuition more strongly. Because when we're using our voice as the healing instrument, the voice is part of us. I can't, take it out at the end of the day and put it in its case like a gong or a bowl or something. The voice is part of me. We are intrinsically linked. And that goes also for intention. But again, I'll do that in another video. So when we're working with our voice, and we're coming across, someone's energy field, or even just stepping into somebody's energy field, even just meeting somebody, in the street, you become a lot more aware of working with intuition because you're working on more subtle layers anyway. So it's something that we can learn. It's something that we all have, and it's something that we can learn to develop. So I would say, yes, we do need to be working with intuition and vocal scanning. The voice alone will pick up a lot of information, but how is that information being translated into your knowing? And that is via the intuition. That is via the information that you are picking up on a very subtle level of being. And that, as far as I'm concerned, is intuition. That's being intuitive. And everybody's intuition speaks to them differently. So your intuition, you might have very different signals about your intuition than I do. Your intuition might speak to you in one way and mine might speak to me in another. And the more you work in this way and the more you engage in vocal sound healing, which is why, if you're going to work as a practitioner in that way, doing case studies is really important, because it's actually the case studies that teach you that consistency, that's coming up again, that whatever the way your intuition might be speaking to you. So yes, I think it's definitely important to be open to working with your intuition when you're working with vocal scanning and vocal sound healing in general. So another question that I do hear a lot is, do I have to be a healer or an energy worker to do vocal scanning? And sometimes I think that's sort of part and parcel of the same question with regards to intuition. So the answer is no. This might be your first entry into working with subtle energy, with vibration, with resonance, and actually working with sound healing and really understanding what you're doing really understanding the nature of vibration, the nature of resonance, the nature of entrainment, the nature of intention, the intention, the power of your thoughts. Because if we are vibrating beings, we know this. This isn't new information. Science tells us this. We know that all matter is made up of vibrating particles and atoms. And we know that everything solid is actually a mass of vibrating particles. It just appears solid because of the state of vibration that it's in. And so we know that we are solid and that our bodies are made up of vibrating particles. And if something is vibrating, it can be tuned. It has a frequency. So we know this already. And I think if you're new to this whole energy healing world, actually starting with sound, with somebody who can really teach you, the basics of energy and the fundamentals of sound, rather than getting into it as a performance art, because that's not what we're doing here. This isn't about performance. This is very much about reading energy, understanding energy, whether you're working with somebody one-to-one, whether you're working in a group sound bath situation, for example. It's about reading the energy of the people you're working with and learning to harmonize their energy, learning to balance their energy. And there are really set techniques for doing this, and it's so important that the practitioner is aware of this. It's not just about banging a gong, it's not just about singing a song. It's not about you, actually. So, when energy practitioners work, they understand that healing energy, high frequency vibration flows through them for the people they're working with, that they actually step out of the way. So it's actually nothing to do with ego. It's nothing to do with how good you are. It's to do with how well you can facilitate that healing energy. And I think this is where, when someone says, oh, do I have to be a healer or, an energy worker to vocal scan? No. But again, if you have that understanding of energy, then scanning is going to make a lot more sense to you when you're working over somebody's body and you're looking at the body. Instead of thinking, oh my goodness, what do I do now? You're looking at the body as a mass of vibrating particles of energy. And you'll start to feel where one part of the energy is harmonized and in tune, and perhaps another part of the energy isn't. So that vocal scanning will lead you to where the body might need work. And really, there's so much about this that we don't understand. Why we led to one part of the body when perhaps the person has an ailment somewhere else. But if you think about the mass and the size that is the energy field, then how can we possibly know for sure what is being moved and where? All we know is that we're pulled to a certain place. We can understand to read energy that might be out of balance. We can understand how to balance it, and we can get feedback from the person to understand if they feel better or worse afterwards. And that's how we learn. So, I think if you're thinking about becoming an energy worker, whatever that might be, and whatever way you want to do that, working with the voice, so close to your intuition, so close to your energy, is a very good place to start. And working with a teacher that can really tell you these things can really help hold space for you while you explore, because actually working with our intuition feels very much like play. First of all, it feels like, oh, I feel like I want to go over there. Oh, I want to go over here. I want to explore. And then we have to understand the boundaries within that so that we don't overload a person. Secondly, working with intuition feels a lot like our imagination. So where does the intuition start? Where does the imagination stop? Or is it part and parcel of the same thing? Where do we get our intuitive information? And often it feels like a vision of the imagination. And I know there's people watching this that go, that's because it is in your imagination. Rah, rah, rah. Sure. Whatever. We all have our experiences. But these things are closely linked. And so when people are learning to do this, and vocal scanning is such an amazing place to start, because you've got your voice there to really help you, you need someone to help guide you in that. You need to know, someone to curb the self-doubt and help you push through and really start to feel into that energy space. And then, of course, you need to learn how to protect yourself when you're working in somebody's energy. So this isn't a simple thing. This isn't just, oh, I'm going to learn that in 2 hours and bam, I'm doing that. But it is something that we can learn to do for ourselves straight away. So if we're working as a practitioner, for somebody else, we have a duty of care to make sure we know what we're doing. But if we're working for ourselves, we can start to explore vocal scanning through simple meditation, through closing our eyes, humming, sending our consciousness around our body, sending sound into our body, and look out for another video on that. But if we start with ourselves and we start with our own energy, then actually building our own chi, our own power, it becomes a lot easier to facilitate energy work for others. And the wonderful thing about our voice, if we have hang-ups about it, is that it helps us to really find out where those hang-ups are, why we have them in the first place, and start to move through our own blockages, our own energy blockages. So, yeah, I've just thrown this one in because this comes up more when we're actually teaching courses on vocal sound healing and energy scanning. People say, well, how do I know I'm doing it right? Well, how do any of us know we're doing it right when we're working with energy? And it comes back to practice. I can't say it more. I say it all the time. It's all about practice. It's about understanding, first of all, it's going back to our intuition. It's about understanding what comes up regularly, the signals and the signs that come up regularly for you. It's about learning and understanding what it is to work with energy in the sense of how much sound to use, how to leave somebody in a state of balance and a state of groundedness so that any energy that you've moved and discharged, they can discharge through their body, through the earth. And ultimately it's about getting feedback. So on the courses that I teach, students have to do lots of case studies. And it's these case studies where they're working and, even from the very beginning of the course, we start to work and you're seeing how somebody feels after that session. And I think, if you're doing it right, if you're taking into consideration the principles of sound healing, working with intention, working with entrainment, doing all of the things that, you would learn, for example, on a course, and then really listening to what people are telling you afterwards. And so often people are just amazed at the results they get. People might come in with all sorts of ailments, stress, fatigue, and you might be doing case studies on those person. Let's say you do 3 sessions on that person, 1 a week for 3 weeks, and people report such huge changes. And at first that's sometimes quite hard to believe. It's quite hard to accept that actually it might be this sound work that's creating those shifts. But when you do that with, let's say you do that with 10 different people and you get similar feedback and you get similar responses and you think, oh, actually I'm doing the same thing here and I'm getting similar feedback from these different people, then you start to understand what you're really doing and you start to understand the processes. And back to that question, you start to understand if you're doing it right. And of course it's going to be different for everybody. It's going to be different for each person administering the sound, and it's going to be different for each person receiving the sound. And that is where we come back to our intuition, that we're guided to work with the energy that we're presented with. So when we go in for our vocal scanning, when we scan somebody's body from head to toe or from toe to head, whichever way you want to do it, we're out in the energy field and we're using our voice to scan into that energy, we will pick something up differently depending on who we're working with. But what you pick up might be common to you in the sense that you'll have some signals that you start to appreciate as, okay, yeah, I understand that when when this happens, it might mean this, or it might mean that. And that's you building your toolkit, your understanding. So coming back to this again, how do you know you're doing it right? Vocal scanning will definitely give you that information. If you learn to vocal scan, work with your voice in somebody's energy field, then you'll understand what somebody needs. And over time and with practice, that becomes your benchmark. That's your way of knowing if you're doing it right. And of course, if you're training, you are doing your case studies. And for example, I'm constantly buried under a pile of case studies, marking case studies for people, reading case studies, and highlighting and pointing out, what might be going on in the energy, why someone might have had a certain response. And I talk about this as well in the episode 2 that we just did, talking about the balance of sound and silence. And of course, we understand that it's not about bombarding someone with sound. It's about allowing the sound to flow and then to have silence to integrate that energy movement. So, what can happen when you first start working with clients is that your ego gets in the way and you think, oh, it's not enough, I need to do more, I need to get a good result. And you bombard someone with too much sound. Well, if you're working with the voice right over the person's physical body and energy field, or you're out in the field, working with intention, it's incredibly strong. You've literally, that person literally has someone in their field moving that energy consciously. And when we move energy, the person has to process it. That energy has to come in to be processed, into the chakra system to be processed and discharged out through the earth. It has to be integrated. So if someone has had stuck energy for, a couple of years, and it's manifesting in illness and stress and, lack of well-being, and then you go in and suddenly blast with all of this sound and all of this good intention, but little understanding of the guidelines, the boundaries, the power really of your voice to move energy, then that person is left with all of this energy that they have to process, perhaps from stuff they've been holding on to for years. And then they might, get very tired and feel unwell whilst the body shuts down in order to process the energy. So, if you get an experience like that, if you have an experience like that, you learn very, very quickly if you've done it right or not. And I would say most good sound healers that are working today will have had that experience at some point, and that is what taught them, what was right and what was not so right. So certainly if you're considering having sound healing as a therapy, make sure you go to somebody that's fully trained and has done all of those case studies and has worked regularly on somebody's body, so they understand this. And if you're considering doing, a sound healing training, I would suggest doing a training that is over a lengthy period of time, because it's not something you learn in a weekend. Even if you are, already working with energy, but you're not familiar with working with your voice in this way, it's incredibly powerful. It's so simple, but incredibly powerful. So, how do I know if I'm doing it right? Experience. And that's something that we can get straight away. We start working with ourselves, we do a course, we start to learn to work with other people, and it comes very quickly because it's really part of our nature. We are sounding beings. We all have a voice. And, it's only sort of human constructs and pressure that's drawn us away from this healing ability that we all have. We all have intuition. We all have the ability to work on this much deeper level in every sense of our being, for ourselves, for our work, for the world, for the planet, and so on. We all have this. And as soon as you start to work with your voice and sound in this way, it changes perspective. It will shift your life and your ability to comprehend these things on such a deep level that, it's a game changer. It'll change everything. It certainly changed my life when I started doing it, and that was about 15 years ago now. I had already worked with energy, and was brought up around, energy, healing, crystals, all of these things. And as some of you know, I went then off into the performance world and moved very much away from, these sort of basic healing ideas. I had to do that in order to understand. And that's it, isn't it? We have experiences that will teach us what we need to know. And it's through those experiences that we have our realizations. So I hope that's given some insight into vocal scanning, without sort of giving you a full demonstration of what it is. But if you have a look at my Sound and Voice Healing Studio Instagram, there are a couple of vocal scanning clips on there, so you can get a sense of what it is. And there'll be more to come as well, as I post more. So I hope this has given some insight anyway into vocal scanning. And it's really the root of vocal sound healing, actually. And for most people that are new to it, it's that catalyst to really understanding how energy works. So I hope that's given you a little taster, and look out for the next episodes in this series, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you very much.